yet another history-making performance for West Ham United this season as we lost to Chelsea by a margin of 5 goals for the first time in history in any competition. David Moyes and the Hammers breaking boundaries and discovering new frontiers with this West Ham team, as always. Not, unfortunately, in this instance, in the manner that we would have liked, unlike the points total at the beginning of this season, the first European trophy for 4+ decades. All of the good things have come with a big old helpful of bad things mixed in there every now and then, particularly the pattern this season and the amount of times with which we've just been completely turned over by teams. I believe James Jones, who joins me, Will Pugh, for this week's podcast. Is that the 4th time we've conceded at least 5 this season? The 5th. Fulham, Palace, Chelsea, Arsenal.
Liverpool.
4th.
Liverpool, if you include the League Cup at Anfield.
Yeah, of course, right. Yeah, so 5th time it is we've conceded 5 goals or more. Bit of a peculiar one. Everyone knows the situation now. We don't need to go over it again, that we had a really good start to the season and the second half has been unacceptable. I think based on the second half of the season, West Ham would be 1 point above the relegation places if you take into, if you just did a second half of the season league table. So not good enough at all. Everyone seems resigned to the fact now that David Moyes' era is over, and already, as suspected, really in recent weeks, the sort of attention or the focus has started, as predicted, to switch to fury about David Moyes being such a terrible manager, to fury that David Sullivan is such a terrible owner, as news reports emerge this morning on this bank holiday Monday morning that West Ham have agreed a deal with Julen Lopetegui. All the usual sort of murmurings coming out. It was definitely Tim Steiden's decision. He was our first choice all along, despite the meeting West Ham and David Sullivan had with Ruben Amorim in London in the last couple of weeks. Ruben Amorim, whose Sporting Lisbon team just secured the Portuguese league title. James, where do you want to start, really? If lots of people suggesting that West Ham players were already on the beach yesterday and that they've just given up. They didn't really manage to muster much energy in that performance at Stamford Bridge. And I must admit, it was mustering the energy to do this podcast was quite some undertaking this morning. How are you? What do you make of it all?
I'm okay. It's the season's done. It now feels like the season it rested on us having to beat the team that is still unbeaten in the whole of the entire world for us to continue competing at any kind of respectable level, and we didn't do that. All of the efforts went into that 90 minutes against Leverkusen. And ever since then, it wasn't a bad game against Liverpool a couple of weeks ago, but a decent result in the end. But
decent draw,
it does feel like the players have they know David Moyes has gone. I would have thought there has been some kind of communication internally regarding that.
I think it would have come out if that had happened, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, maybe. But the players aren't stupid. They will know exactly what's going on. And you get the feeling that there's probably a bunch of them that probably know they're on their way out in the summer anyway. They know we can't. It's like almost impossible for us to qualify for Europe, and they got an inkling, a very, very good inkling, that the manager's on his way out as well. So it's like, well, what are we playing for here? What's the point? We might as well just do one now and get on the beach. And those that are playing in the Euros, they might as well just start preparing for that. Why exert any additional energy when you need to save it to represent your country in the summer? So that's it. Game over for us. Game over for David Moyes. It's just a little bit rubbish. It's really disheartening the way this is all ended. If I'm honest, it saddens me greatly.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, really, isn't it? Where it's like, really, if this wasn't happening, certainly as far as David Moyes goes, if this wasn't happening, it wouldn't be ending, would it? Do you know what I mean? Like if we were 6th, there'd be no. Well, there still would be a few, like of the. I don't know what the right word is really. I just can't be. I haven't got the energy to get into a row because of use of the word I was going to use then. But a few of the more ardent anti-David Moyes fans at West Ham would have still been unhappy. But if we were 6th and qualified for the Europa League again, or 7th even for the Conference League, really, like it wouldn't be the end of an era, would it? There'd be a feel-good factor around the club and a bit of positivity. And I just sort of think, the David Moyes era is over. I don't know. It's a strange one, really. I think what the sad thing about it all is, and I got a load of grief the other day. We went through a few of the YouTube comments and we were laughing about it because it is only football after all. But it's kind of been my point all along, is that all of these people screaming for David Moyes to leave seem to be labouring under the delusion that the club is this like well-run footballing machine, and that once we get rid of this perceived, like, I don't know what I don't want to go too strong again, but this perceived like rotten egg that was David Moyes that's sort of spoiling the turd in the punch bowl or whatever for everyone else. Once we get rid of him, everything will be great and we can finally start being the West Ham that we all think we should be. I don't mean include me in there. I just mean the ardent Moyes outers. And it's like, what do you think is going to happen like afterwards? And as we've seen, the Ruben Amorim thing, that I've said it all along. For ages, if we'd have got him, I would have been well on board with that. I would have been properly on board with it. But Lopetegui's coming in. I don't know. Well, it appears Lopetegui's coming in. Nothing's been announced, of course, yet. But just the fashion in which is sort of all like playing out in the public. Like, you'd hope. Well, you could all. I can't see how it doesn't get announced before the Luton game now. But it's just all got a bit like classless and ugly, sort of again and as usual. And I don't know how you feel about Lopetegui, to be fair, because opinion seems to be somewhat split. But I'm not exactly sort of filled with this, this sort of. I don't know. Like I haven't really got any sort of like feelings of real positivity and excitement. I don't really. Yeah, what he's going to do if he does well, great. I don't want to write him off as a nobody because I probably don't really know that much about him. But he certainly doesn't, like, with all the work we seem to have to do in the summer. I can't see it being particularly sort of like enjoyable in the dawn of this wonderful new horizon post David Moyes. As I'm not saying it's right to keep him, by the way. I get that it's done, but I don't. It doesn't feel like there's been any forward planning. Well, there obviously hasn't, because they're waiting. What sort of a club says, "I will wait until the end of the season, then we decide"? Where's the forward planning there? It's like, and the argument would be, "I've always done that." Well, that doesn't mean it's right. Like, what are you talking about?
I think there has been an element of forward planning. Lopetegui was linked. Where was it last Christmas during the World Cup? I think when there was and ahhs of whether David Moyes would stay or go then. And he may have even been linked before Moyes came back when Pellegrini won his way out. So there's definitely been previous contact there. So maybe there has been.
Do you think it's contact, or is it just linked because he was one of the on the short list, like someone who was available?
I don't know. But my big issue with this whole thing is, first of all, this clamour for Amorim. Yes, up and coming, promising coach. Would have been a coup to get him. Let's be right here. He was not coming. He was not coming. The moment he landed back in Portugal after that meeting, he apologised publicly because he realised he's made a boo-boo by doing it. And he's won the title, and now he's come out and gone, I'm staying now. It was never going to happen. And all this talk about, his release clause is only 15 million euros. It's like, yeah, but it's all very well matching a release clause, but you still got to convince him to come. And by all accounts, that 3-hour meeting with David Sullivan wasn't very convincing for him, because he was straight back on a plane back home afterwards. So all this talk about how it was a clear choice between Amorim and Lopetegui, I just think a lot of fans were being quite naive about how this actually works. And and my thoughts on Lopetegui are that I don't think he's as bad as everyone is making this guy out to be. I mean, I've seen fans, they're doing petitions.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's just pathetic.
400 signatures that got like that. There's what you
petitioning for? I mean, these petitions are for to go to the government and get the government to discuss things. What are you going to get the Prime Minister to start talking about?
So it's just don't even give it up.
It's pointless. It's pointless.
Yeah, but that's a proper like hardline faction of fans.
The fact is that I've seen a lot petition on that. I've seen a lot of people go, he's not the next level manager. He's not this. He's not that. I don't think he's as bad as everyone makes out. He improved Wolves. He took Wolves from the relegation zone when he took over to 13th that season, midway through, and only left that summer because of a row about a lack of investment with the owners. That's a concern, but I think we've already discussed that. And he improved Sevilla, led them to a Europa League trophy, which actually isn't that impressive given Sevilla win the Europa League almost every year anyway, but he still went and won it with them.
But that is a massive achievement, isn't it? You know what I mean?
It is, yeah. So he's managed Spain. A lot of people pointing towards his time at Real Madrid and going, he flopped at Real Madrid. It's like, okay, well, that means he's not an elite manager then. But, I mean, we're not Real Madrid either.
He's been to Real Madrid.
Yeah. The fact is that Real Madrid appointed him in the first place, so he must have some kind of pedigree. And I think, he gets his teams playing football. A little bit more of an attacking intent there. I saw some fans post a bit of a show reel of Wolves playing his style of football in that season, or that half season he was in charge. And it was a bit of a tongue in cheek because the finishing in the show reel wasn't great. And there's fans going, yeah, but look at the finishing. It's like, well, Lopetegui ain't going to be playing up front, is he? That's not his problem. The fact is that Wolves are playing some decent football there. So I think at the end of the day, if it is him and we're led to believe that he has agreed and, they're just, crossing the T's and dotting the I's now, then we need to get behind him. We need to get behind the decision. The fact is we've had 4 unbelievable years under one manager. 4 years that when Moyes came back, people were pulling their hair out going, what on earth are we doing here, bringing him back? Look what he did. So we know more than any fan base that sometimes appointing a manager that isn't the glamour manager doesn't mean to say that it's all going to go belly up and we're going to be terrible and we're going to go down. And it's, in fact, Lopetegui might come in and do the exact same thing as Moyes has done. He might take us back into Europe. He might take us into the Europa League. He might win us the Europa League. Like, the guy's done it before with another football club. So yeah, like I don't know. I think it's. I think a lot of people are moaning about his age. He's 4 years younger than David Moyes, and we want a young manager.
Yeah.
Don't think it makes any difference.
Give it.
It's not like Roy. It's not like bringing Roy Hodgson. You know what I mean? Like, the guy's only in his 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm behind it. I think it's a decent appointment. It's not one that everyone's going to go, oh my God, West Ham have managed to get Lopetegui, but how they do that? But I think it's a decent appointment. That if he's on board and he's willing to work with Moyes, unlike the way he wasn't really willing to work with Wolves' owners, then I think we've got someone there. But like we said, he's got to have time. That squad needs major surgery this summer.
Well,
major surgery. And he needs. I mean, I'm swaying towards, well, we're going to have to sell Paqueta this summer, because otherwise we're not going to have any money. And like 10 players at least. 10 players. It's got to be. And it's got to be 10 players that he wants, not who David Sullivan wants, or Steaton or whatever. It's got to be 10 players that He wants to bring in and improve that squad and actually have a squad that isn't with 6 youngsters on the bench every week. So yeah, but I'm okay with the appointment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there have been those suggesting that the reason he's done so well at Sevilla, who's working under Monchi, who's now Aston Villa, who's doing a sterling job there and is credited with a lot of their success, and his working relationship with Unai Emery. Yeah, I just think there's so many. I don't know. It's just a lot of mixed signals and mixed messages, isn't it? You know what, mate? Honestly, I really agree with you. Like, you know, he's got a real good managerial pedigree, right? The only thing I fear is that, you know, he had a very short stint at Wolves, like you said. Sorry, this isn't the only thing I fear, but I think the fact that he's a principled man who walked away from Wolves, you know, based on a disagreement with the owners over promised spending and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, someone put it really expertly well on Twitter yesterday, right? I'm just gonna pull it up now and read it out. What does it say here? Hang on, sorry. Right, what did it? Sorry, I mean, this is terrible podcasting. I should have had this prepared, but right. So this is from an account on Twitter. Many of you may know. I don't know the person. It's just an account that, among with many of differing West Ham opinions that we follow. Irish Iron at Irish Iron 32. Days like today. This is after Chelsea. Days like today are what our board deserves. Been spoiled over the last few years by a manager that found a way to work with them. Catches you up in the end, though, when you manage to make a mess of basically every decision and now nobody cares. Now, it's that bit in the middle, right? About been spoiled over the last few years by a manager that found a way to work with them. And I think there's huge value in that. And that's, in fact, when I've said this before on the podcast, what makes David Moyes' achievements at West Ham so much more impressive is that he's done all of that, you know, in spite of the environment, the unique and sort of wacky, he's being kind, I suppose, environment that is West Ham United Football Club under David Sullivan. And I just think loads of people are ignoring that. We saw with Pellegrini, he was like a proper manager with proper pedigree. He brought in his own sporting director in Huselos, which obviously went pear-shaped there. But you don't know, you know, you do hear lots of Pellegrini's gone on to do okay still. It wasn't like his whole, he's at Real Betis, I think, or he certainly was.
Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, and he's doing doing pretty well over there. I just fear that, you know, and I think some fans underestimate it, and some fans already, as I predicted, we're seeing is that David Sullivan. The reason he was probably unsure about getting rid of David Moyes is because he knows that David Moyes has done a sterling job of keeping the heat off of him for 4 years, because that's what's happened, isn't it? And you can literally see it already, mate, on Twitter, as I predicted a couple of weeks ago, that already there's anger at Sullivan already. Like, and that's just going to come back. So if Lopetegui manages to do and have those abilities, the invisible abilities that David Moyes has got, you know, ignoring the style of football for a minute and ignoring, you know, his sort of hesitancy to make subs at crucial moments of the game. One of the things he was elite at, and in fact, the best of any manager we've had since David Sullivan and David Gold took over, was dealing and working under them. No one's been as good at it as he has. And Pellegrini, who's obviously worked in some elite organizations and in certain structures, was just like, absolutely not, get me out of here. Lopetegui's got like a track record of walking away because of walking away from like decent projects. Wolves are an established, decent, like top half or middle part of the table Premier League side now. He's got a track record of walking away after discussions or interactions with owners he deemed unprofessional. There's no saying that won't happen round the corner. And he might and then I don't know. I don't want to fearmonger, right? Because I think it's a really good manager, and I think if you'd said West Ham would get a manager with this track record prior, I suppose, to Pellegrini's appointment, because Pellegrini, everyone was well excited, weren't they? And it backfired hugely. I think his pedigree's brilliant, and I think it's good. I just think I just worry about his and lots of managers' abilities to work within the system that is West Ham United, as you see at Manchester United. I refuse to believe, and they've proven since, that David Moyes, Jose Mourinho, Louis van Gaal, and even Eric Ten Hag are bad football managers. They're like a product of their environment, aren't they? Just how sometimes at the other end of the scale, at clubs like Brighton or Brentford, the excellent nature of the hierarchy and the club setup makes managers perhaps look better than they actually are, as we saw with Graham Potter, who then gnaws it a bit at Chelsea.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the key figure in all of this is Tim Steedon, in that this is a guy that played a huge role in what Leverkusen are achieving this season. We took him from Leverkusen in the last summer, so he was the one that appointed Alonso. He was the one that helped build that squad essentially. So I think a lot of trust has to go into him. And regardless of what we hear and all these rumours going about that there's fallouts here and Tim Steedman's not happy with this and stuff like that, the fact is we don't know what's going on. And yes, in an ideal world, David Sullivan wouldn't be at the football club and we'd be run a little bit more professionally, and none of this would be playing out in public. And we'd have an owner that is quite willing just to take a step back and let the football people do work on the football side. But the fact is we don't, and we've kind of got to suck it up until that day comes.
And it could be worse, couldn't it?
And it could be a hell of a lot worse. I mean, there's so many other clubs in the country that have it a lot worse than us.
Yeah. Oh, mate.
Owners that don't pay the players, and
look at
stuff
Leeds,
like that.
Southampton, like
Reading. Look what's happening at Reading at the moment.
Definitely.
So yes, it's not great. It's not a great scenario, but it's been 12 years since he bought the club, 13 years since he bought the club, and we should be used to it by now. And this is just the way it's going to be until
great times, isn't there, recently? So.
Yeah,
I know.
But Lopetegui I think he's a good appointment, and I hadn't even mentioned his time at Spain, unbeaten as Spain manager. And only left because it was announced that he was going to take the Real Madrid job after the 2018 World Cup, and the next day Spain just sacked him because they didn't like it.
Thanks.
And as a result, they completely flopped in the World Cup. It completely unsettled them. So he probably would have gone on and done pretty well in that World Cup as Spain manager. He was unbeaten when he left. So
you never know.
This is also a guy that has proven himself at clubs that are there or thereabouts when it comes to our level. Pellegrini, having thought about it, looking back, I think many people were only really excited because he'd won the Premier League with Manchester City,
which is a fairly decent achievement.
But it's also very different. Two very different ends of the spectrum. Taking Manchester City to a Premier League title, and take it and solidifying West Ham in the top 10 of the Premier League and getting them competing for Europe, I think are two very, very different challenges that require different qualities, different skills. Lopetegui is going to be walking into an environment, if he does come, that he's relatively used to in terms of a club, competing for top 6, top 7 of their division.
Oh, I see. Right.
Players that aren't
expectations. You mean, yeah,
expectations. Players that aren't considered world-class elite. Maybe one or two in there, but that's if they stay.
Could have Bowen.
So, but yeah, I think we've got a manager here that is used to working at a club of West Ham's stature, West Ham's expectation and size, as opposed to us just going, well, he's won the Premier League with Manchester City, so he must be good. Unless you're getting Pep Guardiola, then there's no guarantee that it's going to work. So yeah, I think it's a good appointment, and I think if David Sullivan could just allow Tim and Lopetegui to do what they got to do, then I'd have a little bit more trust and a little bit more faith in the project that we'd like them to build. like I said right at the beginning, Tim Steaton is the key figure in this. If you look what he's helped build at Leverkusen, I'm not saying that we're going to go and do what Leverkusen's done, but that's a really good sign that he knows what he's looking for. He knows how to do a good job. He knows how to build a club and a squad and get a manager in that knows what to do. But he's got to be left alone to do it. Otherwise, it's all going to fall apart. It's all going to end in tears.
I do hear from very, very trusted sources that Lopetegui is a David Sullivan appointment. That he was that David Sullivan was the one pushing for Lopetegui all along. Seen only this morning, David Ornstein from The Athletic has released a story going, and it's very much Steiten's appointment, and it's like, well, that's quite a deliberate choice of words there. So you can sort of put 2 and 2 together, and have a fair old stab at coming up with 4 as to where that sort of thing would come from. But I say, very, very trusted sort of sources, friends of this podcast, and like journalists who I know for a fact are very well connected at the upper echelons of the club in and around. Will have you, not that I don't mean Steiten's like properly against it. It was just very much this is who David Sullivan wants. He's been pushing it a long time. Various members within the club, high level, sort of pushing him in other directions, maybe, or imploring him to look elsewhere. And I think probably Amorim would have been someone who would have, caused him to do just that and look elsewhere. But I think as soon as that one, like you say, I agree with you. Really, it's just another one of them classic, like, let's get our name linked with a big player or manager name, in the hope of getting some fans to sort of think that's where our ambition levels lie. I'd have butted with Amorim, but I agree. I don't think just as an isolated managerial appointment that Lopetegui is at all bad. I think he's a very good manager with excellent pedigree. And I remember thinking it was a huge coup for Wolves to get him at the time. So I don't think West Ham are vastly bigger than Wolves, for us not to feel the same way. I am just a little bit concerned, really. And it's a weird way, because as I'm saying all this, I'm like, oh, well, actually, it is probably a really, so it is an exciting appointment just as a manager. And I think I'm probably just finding it a little bit difficult to have faith at the moment, because it's weird, really, because the more I'm talking about it with you and thinking about it, it's like, well, it is a good appointment there. It just feels like there's a little bit too much going on, and with like all the rebuild, which I do blame David Moyes, or not blame him for, but David Moyes, the fact we've got a small squad is down to David Moyes. He's openly admitted he prefers to play with a small squad. Facts of the matter are, in the Europa League season when we lost to Frankfurt, and this season, the reason our season scuppered in April was because it's all very well like of a small squad, but it was too small both times. So that's on David Moyes. I've got no problem saying that whatsoever. And it's always felt like that, hasn't it? You said it there already on this podcast. Well, we need to buy 10 players this summer. It's weird. It's felt like that every transfer window, isn't it? Like it's felt like every window we go into, summer or winter, we're desperate to do, and we need to do a lot of business. And it always just feels like we do like 80% of, or 80 to 90% of the amount of business we need to. The quality of the players has been spot on. Like the recruitment has been the best it's ever been under David Moyes in my lifetime, right? Hands down. But as in quality of players we've signed, but it just always has felt like we just haven't had enough. And it's like, it's stared you in the face 2 seasons, isn't it? I know we won the Conference League, but we'd given up on the Premier League ages before it mattered. So we're only really focusing on one competition at the end of the season anyway. And I think if we want to compete on all fronts, like we just need a bigger squad. And I just think, again, excuse me, we're left in a situation where we've got loads to do. And it just, I don't know, I just don't, that's a good way to do it. And I can't see us making the signings we will need. Like you said, 10, I don't really disagree with you. Like we're on a bad run as far as homegrown players go. particularly if Ben Johnson leaves this summer. Yeah, I'm finding it really hard to sort of be positive and excited when actually, there are some reasons there, particularly if it is Lopetegui who gets appointed, to feel a bit positive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there are. I sort of alluded to this in my BBC column this week, and that the reason why a lot of fans are really disappointed with the way the season's ended and frustrated, but also kind of struggling to be positive or have a little bit of faith about what's to come next is because of the job that David Moyes has done over the last 4 years, and he's raised the bar massively.
Yeah.
And in turn has raised our own expectations, let alone the club's, to the point where finishing ninth, which is better than our average finish in the Premier League's era, is seen as a massive failure and a massive disappointment.
By some, mate, because I don't feel that way.
By some, but at the end of the day,
you don't feel that way, do you? You don't think it's a massive failure, do you?
I think it's more of a disappointment than a failure, and only because of the start of the season that we had and where we were at Christmas. And we were going into the new year feeling, yes, we're competing in the top 6. It's an outside chance of really competing for the top 4. Now, this could be a really, really good historic season again, and it's ended the way it's ended, and that's why. But yeah, from a squad building point of view, I mean, we've got 3 players coming back from loan, first team players, and you wonder. I think 3 players that I think everyone expected us to sell, but you never know what Lopetegui might think of them if it is him, in Benrahma, Kehrer and Downs. But this...
Oh, mate, don't drag me down even more. The idea of watching Benrahma in a West Ham shirt again is not what I need today.
I mean, I would not be surprised if Benrahma turns out for us at the first game next season. I would not be surprised. And I think, but when you consider you've got Fabianski's
got enough on my plate at the moment, mate.
Creswell's gone. Apparently, he wants to go to Wolves.
Yeah, play with Big Dawson again.
I was going to say, who wouldn't when Dawson's there? Yeah. I mean, I'd like to go to Wolves.
I'm going to support Wolves next season. Yeah.
Creswell's
Lopetegui brings him back.
You never know, because he signed him there, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think it was him that signed him.
Dawson just wanted to go up there to be near his family, didn't he? But
Ogbona's gone. I would have thought. So there's 4 or 5 players that are just leaving anyway. That it's about time they left. With 3 coming in.
I don't understand the Fabianski's inclusion in that, but yeah.
Well, I mean, isn't he out of contract as well?
Number 2.
Has he got one more year left?
Don't know about the contract-wise.
I think he might be out of contract.
If we can keep him, I think we'd be mad not to.
100%. If we can keep him, you give him another year, 100%. But it's at least, even with the players coming back, and you consider the older players that are on the way out, it's at least 10. And if we don't, then we're going to be in the same boat. But it all goes down to the fact of the matter is the amount of work that needs doing to that squad means that we've got no choice but to give Lopetegui time. He needs 3-4 windows to build to build anything that was going to resemble what he's capable of doing.
That's 2 years, mate.
Well, I mean, it might, like I said last week, as long as we're seeing signs that things are going okay, then that's absolutely fine. But he needs the time to build that squad. We're not going to bring in 10 players that are going to make an immediate difference to that football club in one window. It's probably going to have to happen over 2. Maybe even 3.
Right, but I'll tell you what then, let's just run through it, right?
You don't buy 10 first-team players in one transfer window and you succeed immediately.
I don't mean but we don't need 10 first teamers. That's what I was just going to run through, right? I agree we probably need 10 for the squad and given who's going to leave, but we'll just go through it from Saturday. I appreciate there's some injuries and stuff, but realistically, right? So Areola, fine, yeah. If we can hold on to Fabianski, great, but picking up another number 2 goalkeeper isn't going to be a huge undertaking, right? But anyway, just in the starting 11, Areola, absolutely fine, doesn't need replacing. Emerson, one of our best players, doesn't need replacing. Soufal, that's like, realistically,
if you can find an upgrade, great, but if not the worst. Yeah.
No problem whatsoever if Soufal starts first game of next season. Zuma, need a replacement urgently. Ogbonna, like slash Mavropanos, slash Aguerd, none of them, in my opinion, good enough for where we want to be. Like, I could just about stomach Mavropanos starting first game of next season, but realistically, we need 3 centre halves, don't we? Like Zuma, Ogbonna, Aguerd all need to go, and we need to buy at least that amount of centre halves.
That's 3.5 players when you consider the potential upgrade on Soufal or keeping him. 3.5.
Yeah, I think you ignore Soufal for now, but I agree if like a brilliant upgrade comes, but he's done nothing wrong again this year. He's had another great season. Edson Alvarez, brilliant. Like, no need to replace him. James Ward-Prowse, great. Souček, like perfectly good seasons, decent enough midfield there. Like, maybe you bring in another one more, like maybe like a Calvin Phillips, only good.
I think I'd keep you rather than spend the money on another one. I'd keep Flynn Downs in the squad. He's had a great season with Southampton.
Yeah. Totally forgot about Flynn Downs.
Yeah, keep him.
And then you got Jared Bowen, Lucas Paqueta, Mohamed Kudus. Brilliant. Likely to keep in all 3 of them. Slim, so maybe you have to replace one of them there. And then, you know, in the 15-year-old story of our lifetime, of course, we need a new striker.
We need probably 3, I would have thought, to be fair. Probably 3, just in case one or 2 are duds. You got another one.
No, mate, look, I think Mikel Antonio, I think, is perfect off the bench for West Ham. You obviously get rid of Danny Ings. Divine Mabama, you know, I mean, really? Like, it's a whole season it's been now, 0 impact whatsoever. I just think he'll be another Jeremy Ngakia, Grady Diangana, like championship level player, which is totally fine for him, but I don't think he has an impact at West Ham. It's just so Antonio's your sub striker. So the big money needs to be spent on. You need 2 first team quality centre halves and a first team quality centre forward, and then another decent level centre half. That's where your main money has to go, really, isn't it? Maybe and then another striker. So your six players where the lion's share of the money goes is a striker. You probably need to spend reasonable money on the replacement for which one of Paqueta, Kudus, or Bowen leaves.
It'll be Paqueta. I think.
Yeah. If the betting thing sort of gets cleared up, okay. I don't think that was quite as the whole like him leaving is quite as straightforward because of that. I think if it wasn't that, he goes. But so yeah, there's some big money there, and then you need to get some like, you know, decent squad players. But I don't know, mate. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I know this isn't very good for a podcast where literally 38 minutes in and all I've said is don't really know. James, I'm just going to let you know, sorry, you talk while I go and find my laptop charger.
Okay, mate. Well, now you've said that, I think it's more of an argument, and I know you're not really going to like this, but it's more of an argument to keep the likes of Said Benrahma and Tilo Kehrer in the squad, because when it comes to buying a striker and a centre half, you know, you're looking at probably at least 30 million each. And even then, you're probably not getting a top class elite player. So that's a £60 million outlay. And that's just for one of each. And then if you think we need probably 2 central defenders, then it's probably another 25 million. So now you spent 85 million quid on 3 players. And that's probably the fee that we're going to get for Paqueta. So I think there's an argument to keep the players that were out on loan, keep them in the squad.
Mate, get rid of
at least for a season, because you don't know. How many times have you seen players, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, and I know you're going to roll your eyes. How many times have you seen players that have had absolute shockers at the club, been shipped out on loan, and then there's been a change of a manager, and suddenly it's like having a brand new player because they're playing under a new manager?
I don't know when that's happened. Name me one occasion that's happened.
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it could be the case. It could be the case.
You're such a little cliche merchant sometimes.
I'm trying to remain as positive as I possibly can. And
yeah, but that's unrealistic.
I don't think it's unrealistic at all. I think, you know, he's doing well over in France.
Is he? What's he done over in France?
Well, I haven't got his stats to hand.
No, exactly, because
I think the fans are
not.
I think the fans are pretty happy with him.
You've basically seen that video of him doing a Rabona or whatever on Twitter.
He's been doing Rabonas.
Yeah, didn't you see that?
No, because
he did that rainbow flick,
and then everyone's like, at the weekend, and I immediately
not rainbow flick. I meant
a rainbow flick.
He's like, yeah, hang on, Cyberarmor. Why isn't that loading quicker? Yeah, he did that. He scored
a couple of goals, hasn't he? Benrahma.
And then all our fans on. It took him ages. He only scored his first one about 2 weeks ago, I think. And then all our fans are like, "Oh yeah, see, should have kept him." It's like what they didn't actually show you was the rest of the video where he proceeded to lose the ball. All right, what else we got here? There you go. Detailed performance data.
2 goals and 2 assists.
Yeah, from 10 games, and he got 2. Oh yeah, he got one of those assists and one of those goals in one game, literally a couple of weeks ago. In a 3-2 win against Monaco. Before that, 1 goal and 1 assist in 9 games, which is still vastly better than what he managed for West Ham over about 25 before he left.
I don't know. I don't think it's entirely unrealistic about the question for him to come back and make an impact under a new manager with a renewed confidence.
Ridiculous.
I know you have a deep irrational hatred for the man. And
no, just like I'm able to look at his ability on a football pitch and say he's not very good.
I mean, I don't think I've never thought he's as bad as you've said he is. But I understand that if we can upgrade him, do it 100%. But I'm trying to think about.
Mate, you could be an upgrade.
How do we? Yeah. How do we build a squad efficiently without having to go nuts and break the bank? Well, if you've got a player there that who can come in and be a decent off the bench squad player for a year.
He's not decent. How many times you just keep saying he's decent? He's crap.
I don't
he's
think he's
absolutely
I don't think he's that bad.
Hey, he got 1 assist and 0 goals in 13 Premier League games, 5 Europa League games, and 3 FA Cup games, League Cup games, and 1 FA Cup game for us. That is absolutely abysmal. 21 games.
What about the rest of his West Ham career?
0 goals.
Scored over 30 goals, I think. 25, 30 goals for the club.
Hang on. Now, when I say to you, what about the beginning of the season for David Moyes? That doesn't count.
Well, this is my point. This is my
most recent form.
This is my point.
And he's gone to Leon, been crap there as well. Average. Average.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point of a squad player, though, right? Isn't it? Just being an average player and come off the bench. Anyway,
and do something.
Let's move on. Let's move on. To bring all this to a close, because we've been talking for almost
43-minute intro. Yeah.
I think I'm quite excited for what's to come next. Quite sad that it's all coming to an end under a cloud of toxicity. David Moyes doesn't deserve that, I don't think, given what he's achieved at the club. But I'm quite excited to see what comes next and what, if it is Lopetegui, which is looking likely, then what he can do. Trying to keep the faith.
Yeah, I like that, James. I do like that, and I think I'll need a bit of help from you to do that over the coming weeks. I all I'm worried about is that this whole argument has been minimised, has it not, in recent months, to that a change of manager is going to change everything and make everything okay. Like, success on a football pitch relies on so many more factors, and as we've seen now, some of the irony has made me laugh. I saw someone point out on Twitter this morning that for months it was, David Moyes should be doing far better with these players. Now it looks like he's going. It's the same people are like, oh God, we've only got 5 or 6 good players. David Moyes has left us with such a crap squad. It's like, hang a minute. A couple of weeks ago, he should have been doing much better with these players, and now he's on his way. The players are nowhere good enough, and the squad's terrible. The huge work needs to be done this summer. I don't know. I'm just finding it hard to be convinced that next season is going to be a good one, but that's because there's still loads of stuff that needs to happen, I think, before we get there. And I honestly think, like I say, I'll sort of go back to it. We'll do our end of season review in a couple of weeks after the Man City game. But I sort of think if we come 9th, and if we manage to hold on to 9th, that is, which I think we basically will do if we beat Luton, won't we?
Yeah,
I suppose
there's a few
pretty much
some teams
Bournemouth
around
could.
there with.
Yeah, Bournemouth could still overtake us, but if we beat Luton, we'll give ourselves a decent old chance at coming 9th. I think if we come 9th in a Europa League quarter final, and as I say with all cup competitions, just saying X stage of a competition is good and X stage of a competition is bad is just complete rubbish, because with all competitions, it's who you draw. Like, it's the luck of the draw. So a first round departure to Manchester City isn't completely crap and embarrassing. It's just when you draw the good teams. When we drew the best team in Europe, the champions of Germany, unbeaten all season, and actually gave a pretty good account of ourselves, particularly in the second leg. And if it wasn't for that late lapse in the first leg, I just think if that's where we end up 9th in the Europa League quarter final, I think that's one place less than what we both said on this podcast at the beginning of the season would be a good season. And the Europa League quarterfinal is what we said would be good. And again, it's draw dependent. So it's one of those things, really. I just think, if you'd have given us this season 3 seasons ago, after the Pellegrini debacle, whatever, everyone would be sort of leaping through, jumping up and down, singing hallelujah. And I'm not sure loads has really changed sort of at the club and the way it's set up and the way it's run and by whom, to suggest that we can sort of expect loads more than that now. Like, realistically, if Lopetegui comes in and does a good job, then this is about where we'll end up next season, is it? If you look at the teams who are currently above us: Arsenal, Manchester City, Liverpool, Aston Villa, Tottenham, Newcastle, Chelsea, Manchester United. Realistically, our only peer, the only one of those who's a peer of ours, and by that I mean about the same sort of level, is Aston Villa, who are doing spectacularly well. But other than that, realistically, anyone with their head screwed on and knows how football works can't honestly say that West Ham should be finishing above Manchester United, Newcastle, Tottenham, Liverpool, Man City, or Arsenal, can they? Realistically, do you think?
No, I do agree. I do agree. I think it needs an element of punching above our weight for a period of time. Again, we have done, you'd argue, for the last 4 years to an extent, and it's been great. I think the players we've got at the squad means that that there is a good, strong core there that can compete with those teams for those positions in the league. But yeah, I think essentially, if it does mean that we end up being 8th, 9th, and like we always say, good cut run, then
bearing in mind no Europe next season, though.
Yeah, we can't turn
surely
around and
Premier
go,
League expectations should be higher.
Yeah, and I just think, if you look at it and go, maybe 8th, 9th, and a cut run is probably what we should be expecting realistically. Which I think is a good place to be, because then it does allow that if one you do overachieve, so to speak, then you end up with something quite good, as opposed to going, 13th, 14th would be about right. And then if you overachieve, you finish 9th, and it's like, well, you haven't really achieved anything, really, have you? Whereas if 8th, 9th, maybe even 10th is seen as the bar for that's an okay season, then it allows room for, if you do overachieve, you've ended up in Europe, and it's great. So I think next year that's probably what we should be looking at as a realistic target.
But don't you think it's odd though, mate, that like you're saying then, if 8th, 9th, and 10th is seen as like, about where we should be finishing, like that's obviously not what fans think, or not all fans. It's obviously not what some fans think at the moment, because they're furious we're about to finish 9th alongside a European campaign. That's the other thing. All those averages about our average Premier League position, we're set to finish higher than our average Premier League position since the Premier League started. We've already scored more goals than our Premier League average, and we've likely to, well, we've already achieved more points in our Premier League average, right? Plus, that's alongside getting to a European quarterfinal, right? All those other Premier League seasons that are counted to those averages, the vast majority of those were played without European football. So, which again makes that domestic achievement all a bit better. And fans are still furious, aren't they? Some.
Yeah, but that goes back to what I said earlier in that, the reason why they're furious is because David Moyes has raised the bar. And the way that this season started had so much hope and promise that we were going to finish in the top 6, top 7. It's going to be great. Forget, regardless of the cup run in Europe, the league form before the turn of the year was the level that we've almost come to expect under David Moyes. So when 5 months later we end up 9th, obviously fans are a bit miffed and a bit like, hang on, how has this happened? Because we ended last year beating Arsenal, Man United, and everyone was happy, and going into the knockout stages of Europe again, and then suddenly
Everyone wasn't happy, were they?
We've won four games in 23 games, and it's just that's why. And I think I said it earlier. Fans are frustrated because David Moyes raised the bar of expectation at this football club. But when he goes, that expectation has to go with him to a degree.
It won't,
we cannot expect Lopetegui to come in and have us competing in 5th and 6th immediately. It'd be nice if he did, but we cannot expect that to happen.
But mate, I don't think we'll ever be able to.
I don't think it's entirely out of the question. But
other
it's
than
not
Aston Villa. We shouldn't expect to compete with any of the teams who are going to finish above us this season.
But we not expect to finish above them, but we can compete with them. And we have competed with them for the last 4 years. We can compete with them.
Tottenham and Arsenal and Chelsea this season, yeah.
Well, in fact, we've competed with them just by finishing above half of them, like at points, finished 6th, 7th. We were top of the league at the beginning of this season for a couple of weeks at least. Yeah. So we've proven that we can compete with them. Competing with them and having an expectation of finishing above them are two very different things. But as long as you compete with them, then you've got half a chance of doing it. And I think probably that's all that fans are looking for. It's just a team and a club that is capable of competing consistently with those clubs. And what we've seen
most of them this season.
What we've seen since the turn of the year is the complete opposite. It's relegation form. We've conceded 70 goals this season.
It's just getting on my nerve. It just annoys me when people are just selecting. Like, football is based over a whole season, isn't it? Like, no one was having that at the first half of the season when it's the best Premier League season, first half of a Premier League season ever. No one was having it because it's correctly, right? It's obviously a great start, but it means nothing unless you capitalise on it. We didn't. So, but it's still, football is about a whole season, isn't it? Like, it just doesn't, I just don't get it. There's so many people, like, I understand that the form is bad at the moment. It's been terrible in 2024. But with this, I feel like we're just repeating content now. But yeah, it's just like, football is a 38-game campaign, isn't it? Like, Man City or Arsenal will get no plaudits one way or the other if they don't win the title for a certain portion of the season. Nor should they. The competition format is that you play 38 games and see where you end up. And that's like an accurate reflection. And I just find it a little bit like, it's bad and it's frustrating. I'm not saying that. But ultimately, if you go back to the beginning of the season, West Ham are set to finish one place below what we said would be a good season. And what loads of fans, I think, did say that. And I just think beyond that, if you're going to go into every season as a West Ham fan thinking we should be finishing loads higher than we are at the moment, because basically the way I look at it, we've finished second out of the best of the rest, haven't we? Aston Villa have outperformed us this season. All the other clubs who have finished above us aren't in the same league we are. Like, they're not in the same bracket. They're operating at a different level of financial spend and a different level of targeted players and squad size and squad ability and manager like ability. It's just different, isn't it? Like, I know we play in the same league against these teams. Anyone who is at, like, everyone knows that the chances of West Ham finishing, like, even, you know, Aston Villa, the Leicester thing was such a freaky anomaly. West Ham aren't going to finish that much higher. One or two places, like, granted, I know we've done that under the past couple of seasons under David Moyes, but, like, it's just a weird. I just can't really be bothered if we're going to go into seasons thinking that ninth is a disaster. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, that's going to set everyone up to be disappointed all the time if you go into seasons saying that finishing ninth is going to be terrible. Because it is, isn't it? Like, you'll just be perennially disappointed, other than the one once in a blue moon season where we punch ridiculously above our weight and maybe come 6th or 7th.
I think it's, I mean, again, we're going to be repeating content, but it's all down to the expectations that have been born out of the success that David Moyes has delivered. The fact is, he's shown twice in 4 seasons that he can qualify for Europe via league position in the top 7. He's won us a trophy in Europe. We've had 3 unbelievable European campaigns. So naturally, fans are disappointed that we're not having that again next year. And 2, the reason why we're not having that next year is because of a number of issues that have happened this season and a number of oversights when it comes to recruitment that have led us to not following up the first half form of the season in the second half, and it's cost us. That's why fans are annoyed. Fact is, the success in the first half of the season has led us to feeling underwhelmed with ninth. That's the fact. It's a fact, and it's okay.
I'm not that underwhelmed.
I think it is okay to feel underwhelmed with ninth after being 6th at Christmas and having such a strong start to the season, because your expectations are naturally raised as a result of the success that you're seeing in front of you. So then, when that success doesn't materialise, not everyone's got a different opinion and a different way of looking at it and different feeling about it. And my feeling is, I am disappointed at the way that the season has ended post New Year, and that's because, 1, no Europe next year. Absolutely loved the last 3 years, like everyone else has. And 2, we were looking so strong before Christmas, so strong. We put ourselves in such a great position, and we shot ourselves in the foot with the form and the lack of investment in the squad in January, and it's cost us massively. And it's the second time in 4 years that it's happened.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a bit like, do you know what? Ninth's just a little bit underwhelming. Yes, okay, it's roughly around about a better or an average or slightly better than average season for us when it comes to finishing position, but it's still underwhelming.
Yeah, no,
given where we were.
I think that's the thing. I'm not saying this as in from a position of, why isn't everyone celebrating from the rooftops? This is historic and fantastic. I'm not saying that. It's basically about, like I said at the beginning of the season, I said if we finish 8th and get to a quarter final, that's pretty good. Like, we didn't say that'd be phenomenal. I say, yeah, that'd be a pretty good campaign. Like, that's all right. Let's say we're going to finish 1 place below that. So I'm not like, yeah, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, you know, feeling like Leon away, or when we qualified for the league position, or when we won the Conference League. Not by a million years. But what I'm sort of not willing to do, and what I'm finding a bit difficult at the moment, is everyone painting it as if it's a disaster. And it's like, I don't know if any of you lot remember the myriad actual seasons that were disasters for the past, which made up the majority of our seasons for the previous 30 years before David Moyes come along. It's just a bit flipping draining, I think. Like, we're about to finish 9th, which is like still pretty good. No, not compared to the recent times. Just find it a bit draining. But like I think we've gone over this sort of stuff quite enough times now. Just a reminder, I mean, this is basically the podcast. We've got to an hour already. Jonesy and I do have a tendency to do that every now and then. It's one of those, like we said already, I think the position West Ham are in at the moment is that the individual game. Look, you don't need me and James to you don't need to listen to this podcast to have me and James tell you that losing 5-0 is rubbish. Like, it's not very good. But the one thing I would say is, what was the score against Chelsea at London Stadium, Jonesy? I can't remember off the top of my head.
3-1. I think we won 3-1.
Yeah. So that's the one thing I would say is that we've taken 4 points off Tottenham this year, taken 3 points off Chelsea. We beat Arsenal twice. They've only beat us once. They'll have you again next season. If you offered me, we beat them 6-0 once and then lose to them twice, or we beat them twice and lose them 6-0, I'd take beating them twice. We've got some big points off some big teams this year. There's been positives in there as well. We've got a draw against Aston Villa, who are about to come forth. Like, we've performed well against the well-performed sides. There's been some positives in amongst all the negatives as well. So you don't really need me and James to tell you that 5-0 is rubbish. It's at this stage of the season now where none of it's new. Like, the defending was terrible for almost all the goals. Angelo Ogbonna, brilliant servant, giving me some great moments, supporting West Ham, but he's not at the level anymore. That's okay. Like, nothing against him, clearly not at the level anymore. And you can almost see him standing out there going, what am I doing here? Like, I'm too old for this, lads. Zuma, shadow of his former self. It appears that his best days are behind him. That seems like more of a physical issue rather than anything else. It's cumbersome and slow. But yeah, the defending for all of them, terrible. Like, you don't need me and James to tell you that. If you watch the game or the highlights, you'll know. Me and James aren't going to bring you any sort of enlightening insight on that. So I thought it was worth more of a podcast just chatting around the general situation of West Ham. We got Luton next week, and all I hope, Jonesy, and I'm sure you agree with me here, and it seems like all fans are united in this, that West Ham do the right thing and announce this week that David Moyes is leaving the club at the end of the season. It's like painfully obvious. The fact it's dragged out in the manner it has is just, it's ridiculous anyway. But he's clearly going, right? It's been managed so that there's no feasible way now of him staying. Like, so he's obviously going. The Lopetegui thing seems to be done as well at the time of recording. Just announce it and let all of those fans, which is the majority, right? Whatever your views are now, the majority of fans want to give David Moyes a massive, massive send-off. We saw it after the Leverkusen game. It's easy to get caught up in lots of the negativity that swirls around West Ham, particularly on social media. But the whole fan base came behind the team, stayed behind and clapped, and it was feel like really like old school, like it used to happen at Upton Park, where everyone was there supporting the team, or the vast majority. And the vast majority of fans want to give David Moyes a send-off if he's going to leave the club at the end of the season. So announce it this week that he's going, assuming he is, because it seems it's just so blatantly obvious now, all of these stories coming out. Announce it, and West Ham fans can give David Moyes the hero's farewell even, that he deserves against Luton. Hopefully we sign off with a win for what will be his last game at London Stadium, and everyone can give him that send-off that he deserves. Like, do that, do the right thing, and whatever comes after, we'll cover that. But that's what I would like to see. Jonesy, just a quick couple of things. We had lots of messages on social media again this week, which I've absolutely loved. I won't have time to read through them all, but we'll try and get to a few of them next week. So just a quick hello to Luke King from Down Under. Just a quick one, Jonesy. He just randomly messaged. He said, what the hell have I just watched at 1 a.m. here in Australia? So I just bit tongue in cheek, a bit winding up Luke. I just said, Moyes in. He said, I'm finally starting to see Jonesy's point. I'm keen to hear the pod this week. I've been team positive Will for the longest time, but Jonesy, I finally get it. No matter how flaky your reasoning has been in the past from Luke Down Under there. So I like that one. A couple more messages here, I think, James. Hang on. Who we got? We did. We had a couple of emails. That was it. I think Jim got in touch as usual. So hats off to Jim. How are you? Paul Cumberworth. First time messenger, I think, Paul. He messaged. And no, he hasn't. Sorry, he's emailed before, but he messaged after Chelsea. He said, lads, get ready for a drunken rant. 5-0 summary. Defensive manager, how many goals have we conceded this year? Embarrassing. Have we had any other seasons when teams have scored 5 against us in the league so many times? Embarrassing. With that front line we have, how we not scored a goal today? Antonio Paqueta and take about. Embarrassing. Still a hammer. Be careful what you wish for? ? Cheers for that, Paul. Appreciate you flagging there was a drunken rant before. I've read lots on West Ham social media recently that you just assume is from drunken people. One thing, Jonesy, I did just want to sort of highlight quickly. I saw someone at the weekend say on Twitter, how ridiculous it is to play Ogbonna. And I just said, who would you play instead? And the answer in response was like Kalen Casey, I think, one of the youngsters, like 18 years old or in the youth team. And it's just like, I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, I know everyone's been calling for Moyes to give the youth more opportunities. But okay, you put Casey in there instead of Ogbonna. And you throw him in the deep end. And he has an absolute mare, and we end up losing 7-0 rather than 5-0. How do the fans react to that?
Destroys your confidence forever.
You know what the fans have done? How can you put a
Why'd
young
you leave
player
Ogbonna on a bench?
Why did you put a young player, throw him in the deep end like that? That's unfair. It's going to ruin his confidence. And it'll all be Moyes' fault again because he's put a youngster in there away at Stamford Bridge against a Chelsea team in form. And we've lost 7-0 and it's completely ruined the kid. Like, you can't just stick a youngster on the pitch and just expect him to do well. As much as I think there have been opportunities this season for Moyes to give more minutes to some young players. But the fact is that if he hasn't, it's probably a reason why. And that's facts. Like, everyone was calling for Obama to get more opportunities, me included at the time. Turns out he's probably not good enough. And like, I was going, you've got to play more. I'd rather him play than Danny Ings. Turns out him playing more than Danny Ings made absolutely no difference whatsoever.
No, they're both terrible.
Because we saw more of him over Christmas, and I thought, this is good. Nah, rubbish. Just not good enough.
Exactly.
Fine.
Yeah, that one did make me laugh. I just I put a tweet out over the weekend. It said, any danger of anyone mentioning how many goals West Ham have scored this season, as well as the amount we've conceded, or the amount of points we've got compared to the amount we've got in every previous season since the Premier League started. This sort of making the point that everyone's so keen to look at, crap, we have West Ham, how many goals we conceded. Weird, because I thought we've also scored like our second or third highest Premier League total. I'm not sure. I thought fans wanted more exciting football. So, a bit like Ange Ball at Tottenham, you score more, concede more. But
I do get the complaints around the amount of goals we've conceded this season because we're
not much of a defensive manager, is he?
Well, we were told that David Moyes meant with defensive manager. It's a record equaling worst defensive goals conceded in a single Premier League season. Matches Avram Grant's in that terrible year. So it's likely going to be the record for the most goals conceded. So that's why fans are a bit like, well, this is ridiculous, isn't it? Because, this team is definitely far better than Avram Grant's, but defensively it's worse. How on earth have we ended up here? We won a European trophy last year. Now we've got a worse defence than Avram Grant's West Ham team. What happened? I get it. I do get it.
Oh, we have scored loads more goals than we typically do. And this is the weird thing that this is the one that often I find intriguing stat that football fans or lots of fans don't tend to care about is the amount of points we've got, which actually weirdly is usually like the most important one. Like when Man City or Arsenal win the league in a couple of weeks' time, that will actually be because of the points they've got. It's weird. And that's sort of calculated on how many games you win, which is normally based on if you score more goals and you concede. But I don't want to go into that.
But
now.
mate, the fact is that we've
confusing.
not scored more than we've conceded this season.
No, I know.
And
Yeah,
therefore our points
that is
tally
true.
could have been higher had we scored more and
You're
conceded
right,
less.
mate. I'm being facetious. Andy Lawler did reply, and he said, "These days it's easier to moan than to show loyalty. There's been dark days in my 50 years of supporting West Ham United, and when the teams haven't performed, Moyes needs to accept some responsibility. But the abuse and vitriol shown to him is a disgrace. I thought we were a family. I show far more respect to mine." Because we've got a bit of support. Lots of varied sort of angry responses on Twitter. I don't know. Is it everyone's sort of shrugging and accepting it's all over it? I know what though, James. Weirdly, I'm looking forward to Luton on Saturday. I'm hoping we see like a Leverkusen at home, like, stuff this, I don't care performance from David Moyes. Do you agree? Where he just goes, look, hopefully they announce it and he goes, right, lads, forget everything I've told you. Just go out there, do what you did against Leverkusen. Let's get at them from the start. And we try and put them to the sword, beat them 4-0. And it might actually be that we send Luton down. Weirdly, I don't want them to go down. It'd be a shame if they did, but it looks like I think if we beat them, depending on the Forest result, if we beat them, it all but sends them down because their goal difference is so vastly poor compared to Forest, who are just 3 points above them. So it'll effectively send them down. But just hope it's that, don't you? Like, I'm really looking forward to it. I hope we just go all out. It's a nice, convincing win, hopefully. And you know what I'd love, James? You know that video of Moisey at Lyon and the away end, which we were lucky enough to be in? That keeps going round. I'd love nothing more than one last rendition of that from the vast majority of fans inside the stadium. We've got Super David Moyes, just to sort of as a farewell, and then everyone go on their way. Nice sunny Saturday 3:00 game, few beers afterwards. That's what I want from the day. What do you think my chances of achieving that are?
Well, from a performance point of view, I think it's going to be. I think Luton are going to come at us. Like you said, they've got to win to have a chance of staying up. And if I had a choice between Luton or Forest, there's no like everyone will know exactly who my pick is.
I forgot you actually detest Forest.
Gutted they won at the weekend. I think Luton are going to probably they're going to come at us, which might actually work in our favour. But I'd like to see us go all out, and put them to the sword and kind of end on a bit of a high for Moyes at home, because it's not going to happen at the Etihad the following week. So, be a nice just farewell for him, and I would love nothing more, like you said, for us to give one more rendition of "We've Got Super David Moyes." I would love it, and I'm looking forward to saying goodbye to him. And showing a great deal of respect and thanks to the man for what he's given us, the memories he's given us, the trophy, and the success. And he deserves nothing more than the entire stadium staying and clapping him, and giving him a great deal of thanks and appreciation. And I get the feeling it won't be the case. There'll be quite a lot that will leave, which is fine. But those that do stay, I think you'll get a good send off. And knowing me and how emotional I get, I might even shed a tear, because I'm desperately saddened at the way that this is all ended. Because an unbelievable 4 years, isn't it? Superb.
Yeah. No, totally, mate. Totally. Couldn't put it better myself. Right. Follow us on social media at @WeAre_West Ham on Twitter. We Are West Ham Pod on Instagram. Send us an email at wearewesthampod@gmail.com if you so wish. If you want to buy me and James a pint, we'll probably see each other at Luton on Saturday. Get up there nice and early. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham. Chip in there, and that money will go over the bar when me and James see each other for the last game of the home game of the season on Saturday, or for equipment, licensing fees and all that. to make the pod better for you guys. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to it, and some nice words. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Definitely make sure you do that. Just search We Are West Ham Podcast on YouTube. Yeah, that's about it, really. James has put it well there. We've got Luton on Saturday. So, yeah, times they are a-changing at West Ham. Hopefully we get the chance to say a proper goodbye to David Moyes if the club do the right thing and announce it for the Luton game on Saturday. And we can all bid David Moyes an emotional, fond farewell before we start thinking about next season and whether it may be a positive or a negative one for West Ham. Thanks for listening, everyone. Hope you don't mind the change of format this week when it was 1 hour and 15 minutes of introduction and no other part of the podcast. Hope you don't mind that. I hope you're all good. West Ham are massive. Up the Hammers. Speak to you next week.